Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Courage to Become. I'm so grateful that you have all come back to see another episode. I am so grateful for people like you that are out there that are supporting me. So, thank you for being here. If you've been listening for a while, then you know that this podcast is all about becoming. Not becoming somebody different, but becoming somebody more of who you were always meant to be, who you were created to be. Each month, I like to create an episode that kind of ties into the becoming circle. And the becoming circle is a place where we explore different aspects of personal growth together. We have a Facebook group where we communicate in there, and then we also meet once a month live and have discussions. And this month's theme in the Becoming Circle is flow, and it's really talking all about divine timing. And I'm not talking about the kind of flow where everything's easy, but the kind that comes up when you start trusting in life, even when you don't quite understand it yet. And so we're going to talk today about divine timing and the people who enter our lives for a reason or maybe a season, and the moments that completely change the way we see ourselves. I also want to share a little bit about human design, not as something that you have to believe in, but as one of the tools that helped me to understand myself from a completely different perspective. Because sometimes one new perspective is all it takes to change the course of your life. Have you ever had one of those moments where you stopped and wondered, am I making this all up? Is this really happening? And maybe you've noticed what feels like too many coincidences to ignore, or maybe you had an experience where you met somebody at exactly the right moment. Or maybe you had a conversation that changed the direction of your life. Or maybe it's something as simple as you seeing the same number over and over again. Maybe you felt something so deep inside of yourself that you couldn't explain it logically. And then almost immediately, your mind jumps in and says to you, I must be imagining it. Maybe this is just something I want to believe. These are the moments that I don't think we talk about enough because they're vulnerable. They're scary to talk about. It's a lot safer to keep these things to ourselves than to risk the thought of or to risk someone else thinking that we're crazy, right? But I've had those thoughts too, crazy or not, I've had them. There are experiences in my own life that I don't often share because they feel too personal and sometimes too sacred. Or sometimes they're just a little bit too difficult to explain, but I still have moments where I wonder, am I seeing something in this that it's really not because I want it to be that way? And maybe you've had those moments too where you've wondered. And if you have taken any steps into the self-discovery world, you probably have done a lot of wondering. And I'm sure that's come up in your wondering. One of my favorite sayings is people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And when I was younger, I thought it was just a nice quote. You know how in high school and senior year you had to pick the quote. Well, I didn't pick that one, but it was one of my tops. But now I see it differently because now when I look back at my life, I can see people who arrived at a time when I really needed them. And some stayed and some didn't. But every single one of them left me with something that I needed for my next chapter. And at the time, I couldn't see it. I just knew how it felt. Sometimes it was exciting, sometimes it was heartbreaking, sometimes it was incredibly confusing. There was a time in my life when it felt like everything that was familiar to me was being taken away or stripped away. And if you've been with me for a while, you know some of this story, but it really is the point that changed, the point in my life that changed me. I think it's important to repeat it. Um, my dad passed away unexpectedly, and that same year on my birthday, I learned that my mom only had a few months to live. That same year, I had to say goodbye to my dog. My son left for college. I was questioning my marriage. I was questioning my career. I was questioning who I was even anymore. I had no idea who I was. And I was trying to figure it out. And looking back, I honestly don't know how all of those things in my life could have happened so close together without it changing me forever. And it did. It definitely did. At the time, it felt like life was happening to me. Today, I see it a lot differently, not because the pain wasn't real, because trust me, the pain was deep and it was raw. Sometimes it still is. But some of those moments brought a very soul deep grief that I had never experienced before. I felt everything different during this time. But today I can also see that those experiences were what started me asking questions that I had never stopped long enough before to ask myself. Questions like, who am I? What actually matters? What am I here to learn? Why do I feel this way? And I kept asking myself, why is this happening to me? At the time, I didn't realize that this was setting me up for who I was becoming. And we talked a lot about that last month in the podcast around purpose. But around that same time period is when I discovered human design. And people sometimes will ask me why I stuck with human design because it's scary looking. It's got a lot of lines and things in it that you need to learn and understand. But it was something that deeply resonated with me. And it wasn't because they told me who I was by reading my chart. It was because for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I actually could see myself in the shadow side of my design. I could see the frustration, the overthinking, the conditioning, the beliefs. It was like a light bulb went off and it all clicked that what I was thinking, feeling, it all must be somewhat normal because I just read exactly about what I was thinking and feeling in a book and I resonated with all of it. So instead of judging myself like I normally would, I really became curious. And I realized that my reactions weren't proof that something was wrong with me. They were invitations to understand myself more deeply. And that one shift changed my entire life. Because awareness creates choice. And I made a choice to look at things from a different perspective. As I started looking back over my life, I began tracing what my beliefs were. Where did they come from? Why did I believe I wasn't enough? Why had I spent so much of my life looking for worth outside of myself? And then I noticed something. Those beliefs actually protected me for a long time. They helped me to survive. They helped me to get through a lot. And they helped me to become resilient. But eventually, I kind of grew out of them. And sometimes I wonder if this is true for all of us. What if the beliefs that once protected us eventually become the very things that we're invited to outgrow? And this is why we should always try to step outside our comfort zone. You never know what it might lead you to. Life is always guiding us. Sometimes people ask me about faith. And if I'm being honest, there were times in my life where faith felt completely blind. I couldn't understand what God was doing. I couldn't understand why things were happening. It made no sense to me. I couldn't see the purpose. And when I look back at it now, I don't think it was blind faith at all. It was the faith that hadn't been explained yet. And there's a big difference because we grow into that. I don't know exactly how life works. I don't know whether our souls choose specific experiences or if they simply choose the lessons that they want to learn. I don't know why some people enter our lives for only a season. I don't know why some prayers are answered quickly and others take years. But I do know this. When I look back, I can see a pattern. Every painful ending introduced me to another version of myself. Every experience invited me to look deeper. And every challenge asked me the same question. Are you going to keep believing the old story or are you ready for a new one? The story that we're telling ourselves is exactly that. It's the story of who we are. It's who we become. So whatever your story is, if it's not what you want it to be, it's time to change it. Maybe that's what flow is. Maybe it's not that life suddenly becomes easy. It's not that we stop feeling the pain, but maybe we just stop fighting it. Maybe we just stop twisting at every turn and start to ask better questions like, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of why is this happening to me? That's the question that changed the entire outlook on my life. So today I'm going to leave you with a few questions that I hope support you. And I want you to ask yourself and be honest. I personally like to sit in silence and write what comes to mind. And I just kind of let it flow. And it actually kind of teaches me a lot when I do that. But you can do it however you want, but just be honest with yourself. And I'm just going to leave you with a series of questions to help you to see if there might be a different way to look for you to look at your life. What if the thing that you're struggling with right now is not the end of your story? What if it's preparing you for a chapter that you just can't see yet? Look back at your patterns. Have they repeated? Maybe they haven't repeated in the same way. Maybe they're in a similar way, but different. Write that down. And underneath all that, what belief are you carrying that you never questioned? Not because it's true, because chances are it's not true, but because it's familiar. Because our thoughts become the lens through which we experience life. And when we begin to change that lens, that's when our lives begin changing too. I've told you guys the story before about how my parents were divorced when I was 3 and how I made that mean that I wasn't good enough. And some of those beliefs are subconscious, meaning that they're so ingrained in you that you can't even see them for yourself. And you also know that I try to practice awareness as much as I can to help me to heal. And I still see signs in my life every single day where I'm holding on to a belief, even though I know it's there and I know it's not true. It was so deeply ingrained from the stories that I made up in my head as a child and even into adulthood that it's got to take some time to work through it. But the first place to look is our beliefs, because those beliefs were formed in childhood and it takes a long time to rewire your brain. But if we start to recognize them, we can at least be aware of them. And we often place meaning around ourselves for things that have had nothing to do with us. So pay attention to the root of those beliefs. Dig back to childhood. And when you do, you need to cut yourself some slack and don't be so judgmental of yourself because we do the best we can with what we have. And the fact that you're here, presumably to get to know yourself better, means that you need to congratulate yourself because you're committed to taking care of yourself. And you'll see when you hang out with me that I show you that everything that you need for happiness comes from within. You don't need anything outside of you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment and let me know. Has there ever been a moment in your life that only made sense when you look back at it? Has anything ever hit you so deep that you can't forget it? I truly believe that hearing one another's stories reminds us that we're not walking this journey alone. So if today's conversation gave you even one new perspective, I love your help in reaching someone else who might need it too. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, or share the episode. Every interaction helps this message reach more people who are searching for clarity, hope, and the courage to become. And if you're feeling stuck, not just in your life, but even in your finances, I want you to know that sometimes the greatest gift isn't in having all the answers. It's simply in seeing your options more clearly. And that's why I offer a complimentary financial analysis. It's a chance to explore what's possible, ask questions, and gain a completely different perspective without any pressure or obligation. I'll include the information in the show notes if you'd like to learn more. And until next time, remember, awareness creates choice, clarity creates possibility, and every step you take with courage brings you closer to becoming the person you were always meant to be. I'll see you in the next episode.